I'm joined today by Alistair. Hello, Alistair.
Hi, Andy. Great to join you.
Is it Alistair or Alistair?
Either it depends on people's accents. I respond to both, but Alistair's fine.
That's fine. We respond to various things. I like to ask the question. People who've got a title sometimes want you to use it and sometimes don't. And then you got Alistair, Alistair, and you got other people who missed off the letter of the name because they want to be different. Is it a Sora? Is it a Sarah? I just like to ask. And you get Sarah's without an H. And it's just like, okay, I just ask the question. It's a lot easier to try and save offence later. Right. Boys Brigade. Now, we met at the Hand in Hand conference a little while ago. We'll come back to this in more detail, but just give us a bit of an overview of what the Boys Brigade is all about.
Yeah, so the Boys Brigade has existed for 141 years. So it was started in Glasgow in 1883. And our heart, our vision is to see children and young people come to live life to the full through a relationship with Jesus. And so we partner with churches, and that's churches all across the UK, to provide midweek children and youth groups, and we'll provide the opportunity for young people to have fun, come and experience the balance program. So people like to compare us to the Scouts a little bit. So there is the element that you can go on camps, you can do your Duke of Edinburgh, you can learn skills, play games, do crafts, all those sorts of elements. But at the heart of it is the gospel, and at the heart of it is allowing children and young people to come and explore the faith, explore Jesus, explore church, then hopefully provide them an opportunity to encounter Jesus, whether that's a one-off encounter saying, yeah, I think I've discovered enough, I want to know more, I'm in, but also those ongoing encounters through prayer, through worship, through going to festivals and events and that sort of stuff, and then sending them out to expand the kingdom of God through being a disciple. And that's what we do with children and young people aged 4 to 18 in over 700 churches across England, Scotland, Wales, and the Republic of Ireland. And so, yeah, our heart really is for children and young people to come to know Jesus, and partnering with churches in their ministry. So together we can come together and do that.
It might be an obvious question, but I think it's worth asking. Boys Brigade, Girls Brigade, is it the same thing or are they separate entities?
No, so Boys Brigade and Girls Brigade are separate organisations, but us within the Boys Brigade, we a lot of our groups and a lot of our new groups do take girls. So a group that had girls, welcomed girls, would be called a Boys Brigade and Girls Association. But then there's a lot of churches, for example, that have had groups that have been going for donkey's years, where there is a Boys Brigade and there's a Girls Brigade. But we're very close with them, very close partners with the Girls Brigade. And yeah, we just want to see opportunities for children and young people to, yeah, as I said, come to know Jesus. And so in some cases, there'll just be one group that takes boys and girls, but in other cases, there'll be a group that takes boys, a group that takes girls, but kind of on a local level, and to extent to international level, we do work closely with them.
I thought it was worth just asking right at the start because my experience of Boys and Girls Brigades is growing up, I knew lots of people a little bit older than me who would frequently talk about Boys Brigade. It changed my life. It was at my local church. It was really good. If I hadn't had that, I don't want to think what I'd have done. And as I grew up and had my own kids, I didn't really see many Boys Brigade groups. Actually, I saw lots of Girls Brigade groups. So it's just interesting to see so many guys, I suppose, what am I, nearly 50, kind of 50s to 70s, I guess, where Boys Brigade was really common. And actually, I didn't see many Boys Brigade, but what I did see was loads of Girls Brigades. But the point is, it's an opportunity to engage local communities with the local church, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so we are we're starting groups all the time in churches, but I think naturally, alongside possibly the decline of the church as a whole, we're not at the kind of the heights of kind of 3,000 groups as there were in the 80s, but actually we are in a really strong position. We've had funding streams to invest in new churches, new areas, and kind of the heart of our strategic plan, strategic strategy, which sometimes in the church we love that too much, but actually that drives us and gives us a bit of vision and direction. That is to provide a quality program and a quality of experience. And so, and again, sometimes it can be geographic, kind of there'll be pockets all over the country in some places. But actually our heart would be to increase capacity. So kind of there's not waiting lists and in some areas, and other areas we're starting new groups for the first time. And actually, I think what you've said was right. Kind of, I have conversations with people all the time, with church leaders and kind of with regular Christians, if that's the correct kind of phrase, who kind of their faith journey, a big part of that was the BB, and being in organisations like the BB, and so our heart is to carry that on, as an organisation. There's so many kind of not famous, but kind of well-known kind of people who were in the BB. So kind of people like Alex Ferguson, the famous football manager, he was in the BB, and kind of more a bit younger than that, Stormzy, he was in the BB. And so actually, there are people who, when you mention it, and people can come out the woodwork a little bit. But yeah, our hope is to see kind of the next generation have that same impact of faith, and their faith journey is impacted. We're all on a journey. No two journeys are the same. And for some young people, the fact they're stepping into church, that's the big milestone in their faith journey. And others, it's that kind of discipleship and encouraging them on in their faith. So yeah, kind of, we're not kind of in the heights of kind of maybe the 80s, but actually we're not going anywhere. We wouldn't say we're in decline. Actually, we're striving forward. We're seeing new groups open all the time, and that's really encouraging.
Brilliant. I want to come back to the Boys Brigade in a little while, but you're talking about faith a lot. You're talking about churches. So let's just go back a bit in time for you. What was your journey growing up? Were you in Boys Brigade? Were you in church? What was your situation back then?
Yes, I had the privilege of growing up in a Christian home, going to church. But actually, for myself, it was going to the Boys Brigade and my local group. And for me, that's a family thing. My granddad grew up, was in the Boys Brigade. He then became Boys Brigade captain, and kind of that's the person who kind of leads a group. My uncle was then in the Boys Brigade. My mum wasn't in the Boys Brigade, but she then joined as a helper, as a volunteer, and then her heart for me was to raise me up in the Boys Brigade. And so I joined when I was 5 in the local group, and I was there for 13 years. Going up, and a big part of the Boys Brigade is earning awards, earning badges in this kind of similar way to the Scouts. So I earned my awards. The highest honour in the Boys Brigade was the Queen's Badge. It's now the King's Badge. So I received that. I was then trained up as a leader. I went off to university, and my Friday nights weren't spent in the regular way that students might spend on a Friday night. It was helping in my local Boys Brigade group. And actually, I went to a different church at uni. The church I went to on a Sunday was a different church to the one I went to on a Friday night for the Boys Brigade. But actually, instilled in me was kind of, sometimes we call it a bit of a bug that you can't shift. And actually, yeah, I was so committed to actually the Boys Brigade and all it stood for, and in the impact it had in my life, and wanting to kind of journey back and then journey alongside a new generation of young people. And so, yeah, I then went to uni, and I was a leader for 3 years at university, and then I worked at the church, and then took a step away a little bit from kind of active being a leader. But then after 4 years, through the pandemic of being a children's worker in a church, I then came to work for the Boys Brigade in their ministry team. And actually, while doing that, I've started and lead my own group. So really, it is kind of a bug that you can't shift, but actually that's because the impact it has on people's lives and the memories people have, and then what themselves wanting to give back. So I grew up in church. I attended church my whole life, and I was really privileged for that. But actually, the Boys Brigade still played a special part in actually that sort of secondary experience. I was going to church on a Sunday, but then I was also going to church on a Wednesday night and experiencing it in a different way. And yeah, had leaders who were Christians who really invested in me and loved me and kind of cheered me on, championed me. So yeah, my faith journey is one where I grew up in a Christian home, but actually the BB played a really, really significant part in my life. And there's countless testimonies where people have also had the Boys Brigade has had a significant part in their life too.
I think it was interesting when I was growing up. The Boys Brigade had kind of stopped at my own church and it had gone on to do different things, which is fine. But the guys that had gone to it, what was fascinating was their families were not going to church, but the families would say, "Right, you're going to Boys Brigade because it's going to sort you out," and so they would send their children to the Boys Brigade, even though as a family church was not their thing. However, Boys Brigade was right. That's where you're going to go because that'll do you good. So I loved the fact that even though the families weren't attending together to the church, they were then kind of kicking the kids out. Right, off you go. You're going to that because that's going to help you.
Yeah, and I think we still see that now. We really see it as an evangelistic tool. Obviously, faith is a big part of our program, and so with our younger age groups, or your under 11s, that is stories, that's learning from the Bible, exploring different Bible stories, what they mean, linking it all together, particularly in the Old Testament. Let's link it back to Jesus. That if they're exploring these stories at all at school, it might be an RE lesson. They're not kind of the teacher might not be a Christian. They might have a local church that comes in and does an assembly every so often, but kind of not as much as back in the day where kind of it was a lot more common. It was a lot more kind of talked about people might have had grandparents that went to church. They kind of knew the Bible in a way. They knew the stories. And what we're seeing is that children just aren't getting that in the same way now. And so particularly with our under 11s, being able to explore stories through games, through crafts is really, really important. And then with our older, kind of our over 11s, it's about exploring Christian faith, Christian values, Christian morals. We don't kind of hide away from discussing things like vaping or kind of, is it okay to drink drive? Obviously, no, but actually let's put it back to a Christian basis, Christian morals, which again is a lot of our morals as society are built on those Christian foundations. You look at a lot of our laws can go back to the Ten Commandments, but actually they're not getting that Christian element. And so actually a big part of our program is exploring it obviously in age relevant ways, but our program explores that, and it allows young people a space to discuss, to ask questions. We talk about a faith journey at the heart of the Boys Brigade because it is a journey. We as an organisation, we look at the road to Emmaus as our foundation. That sort of Jesus walked alongside those two disciples. He had time for them. They answered his questions. Obviously, that was in a day. But in our organisation, we journey alongside young people for over kind of 10, 12, 13 years. So we get to know them. We get to journey alongside them. We're in it for the long run. We're not just in it for small, quick wins, small, quick projects. No, we're about investing in young people. We have faith in young people. We want to inspire them. We want to care for them. And as I said, we want to kind of invest in them and show them kind of who Jesus is and that he's a real breathing alive person that they can have a relationship and that they can follow. And as you say, a lot of these young people that come through our doors aren't from Christian homes, and so it's a real privilege. It's an opportunity. It can be challenging at times, but actually for us it's a real privilege to be kind of partnering with churches in their mission, in their ministry, in their outreach, to see kind of be part of that kind of reversal of decline. And I think we are seeing that a lot. There's headlines all the time in the news of kind of young people are turning to prayer, young people are turning to church more than the previous generation. And so God's on the move in the next generation. And for us, it's a real privilege to play our part in that.
I guess one part of what you're doing then is trying to connect some of the dots where these children and young people, they're hearing something perhaps in an RE lesson. I remember some of mine from school where, I was a Christian very much, but I'd sit in an RE lesson and listen to stuff about the church or Christianity as a religion and thinking, that doesn't tie into what I actually do know, because it's the teacher who was very blunt. I don't like teaching this stuff, but I have to. So she begrudgingly taught about the church and Christianity. But it sounds like one of the things you're doing is trying to put some of those dots together to actually create a much wider, much larger image, rather than perhaps just a very, very small picture. But actually, you're trying to enlarge what these children and young people get to see about who God is and who Jesus is.
Absolutely. And a big part of what we do isn't just, here's a Bible story, now let's move on. We do kind of have whole evenings where the evening is a Bible story. But actually, a lot of what we try and do is we have these things called theme programs. So the whole evening is on a theme, and there's a game, there's a craft, there might be an activity, challenge, quiz, whatever it is linked to that theme. But then there's also a Bible activity, Bible story, Bible teaching from that. And the theme itself might not be a Bible theme, but actually we're linking it and we're making it relevant. So off the top of my head, one of my favorite ones is for our 8 to 11-year-olds. The whole evening, the theme was Mexico, so they were learning some Spanish. They were trying some nachos, making some nachos. They were doing a craft. They were doing some games linked to the country of Mexico. So there's a learning element that they're not, which is different than they're learning at school, but they're learning some facts about Mexico, a bit of Spanish, as I say. But at the heart of that, one of the elements was the Bible, what we call Get Into the Bible. So the Get Into the Bible activity started with all the kids having a go at whacking a piñata. And so the kids were having a great time, and they were hitting it, and the piñata was getting bashed, and then out of the piñata comes the sweets. And so for the kids, they've had a great time, they've had some sweets, but then the Bible teaching comes into it. You're thinking, where does the Bible teaching come to kids hitting a piñata? And then we get talking to them about how out of the destruction, out of the beating of this piñata came for them the goodness, which was the sweets. And then we link that to the Bible, and we look at what happened to Jesus on the cross. He was battered, he was bruised, he was attacked, he was nailed, he was dead on the cross. Not that we're comparing hitting a piñata to the crucifixion of Jesus, but there's that imagery. But then out of that death of Jesus came the goodness of the resurrection. And through the resurrection, and when we follow Jesus, we can have life, eternal life with him. And so that comparison with to get the sweets, you had to beat up the piñata, but actually to get life with Jesus, to get forgiveness, to get eternal life, you have to have Jesus dying on the cross. And so you're not just telling them, but you're showing and you're making it relevant, small links like that. And we have that in all our programs, so that the young people come away thinking, oh, Mum, we had a great night. We tried some nachos. I learned this about Mexico. I learned some Spanish. We had this piñata, but then they told us this story. And so it's linking it in relevant ways, engaging ways, that is different maybe to where traditionally you might have, here's our Bible time. We've said a prayer, we've talked about Jesus, now let's go on the rest of our night. It's not connected. Actually, it's connecting it all so that young people are having a great time. They're having great engagement. We're not necessarily ramming it down their throat, but actually we're helping them explore in ways that are engaging and fun. But at the same time, we're not watering down the gospel. The gospel is still the same. How we're delivering it might be slightly different.
The natural question was going to be, what can people expect on a night? But basically, you're giving us a really good picture of food always works. Young people, children, adults too. Yeah, we like food. Piñata, that's not an object lesson I've ever come up with, but I like that one. But actually, it sounds like just a good time. I mean, I was a scout growing up. That's what my one of my older half brothers had done, so that's what I went to do, and it was quite huge where I was. My school, massive scout troop next door, so we went to the scouts. But it was good being with other people. But as a Christian, even then, I'm thinking, it'd be nice if there was a few different elements, because some of the language is a bit right, but I thought I'm not so keen on that. Some of the attitudes, I'm not quite sure that's good. And although we would do good stuff, and it was really good and I really enjoyed it, actually, I personally would have valued, I think, looking back even now, 40 years ago, I would have preferred more of a faith-based scouting, which to me, from what you were saying, that's kind of what you're offering.
Yeah, so our groups are exclusively in partnership with churches. So we partner with churches, and we the leaders on the whole are Christians, particularly when we start a group. Obviously, it could be that parents come along and they join as a helper. And actually, if they're not from a faith background, they are getting the same gospel message and the same evangelism to them as the young people. But yeah, we're in churches midweek, and we offer what we call a balanced program. And so as part of that, there's 6 different program areas. Not that we're doing the 6 program areas every week, but across kind of like, let's say, a term, academic year. You get a variety. And so they all start with get, which is really handy to kind of remember. So kind of get active. So that's anything that's games, movement. It could be sports, or it could be kind of, yeah, the young ones, it might be, let's play a game, stuck in the mud, or whatever. Let's get the parachute out. Older ones, it might be a bit more sport, a bit more competitive. Then there's get creative, and that could be crafts, and particularly for our under 11s, crafts plays a big part. But that could be, let's get cooking, let's get creative with music. It could be kind of working towards a project where you're building something bigger, like a bird box or something. Or I've seen some churches where kind of they do the garden up, those sorts of things. Anything that gets the creative juices flowing. Then we've got get learning, and so as I say, kind of that could be learning learning different to what they learn at school, but so linking back to the Mexican kind of theme, learning kind of a bit about a new country, a culture, a language, kind of learning about the theme of the evening. You've then got get involved, and so that's promoting kind of citizenship, getting involved in your local community, getting involved in your church. And so we see groups fundraising a lot, and particularly around kind of November, a lot of our groups do get involved with remembrance parades, kind of selling poppies, really showing them kind of that they're part of something bigger. There is a society out there that they can get involved in, and so kind of really showing them the example. And get adventurous, so that is things like your camps, you're going out into the woods, those sorts of things that can play a really big part of that, you Duke of Edinburgh. And then the final thing is get into the Bible, and that's where we are exploring with them stories of the Bible, but also, as I said, the Christian values. What does it mean to be a Christian? What does it mean to have faith? Exploring things like prayer with them. And so kind of across those 6 program areas, we produce and we provide resources. So we really resource our groups, help them, equip them to deliver. And as I say, kind of we do that in over 700 churches, from kind of inner city, kind of urban, all the way to kind of rural, out in the countryside, kind of. And the model works, kind of, it is flexible, that kind of, yeah, if I've visited a group kind of inner city, 50 young people, it's vibrant, there's loads going on. But I've also visited a group kind of in rural Yorkshire where kind of there's 6 kids, because the village is miles away from another village. So kind of you've really got kind of that, those 6 kids are, you might get a few more, but you're not going to expect more than that. But for both settings, the experience of young people is great. They don't know any different. Kind of for them, they're having a great time. They're having a quality time, and that's our hope. And it's in both circumstances. It is churches in that, who in a lot of places the church building is in a key central point in the community, and rather than keeping the doors closed of an evening, they're opening them up. They're welcoming in children and their families, children and their families that they might not usually connect with on a Sunday. And that's not saying that they'll automatically be there on a Sunday, but actually it's churches opening their doors to their community, saying, come on in, and providing a great time for the children and young people, provide great opportunities, but also providing them opportunity to explore faith and learn a little bit more about who Jesus is.
So you're saying 700 churches across, was it the UK, was it England?
So that's England, Scotland, Wales, and the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah.
And that's multi-denominational. So we partner with all different denominations. And so kind of really there's a real beauty of doing ecumenical work and partnering with churches, regardless of their denomination.
So there's a fair chance that you might not be too far away from a Boys Brigade church. Well, church has got Boys Brigade. How can people find out more? I'm guessing you've got a church finder of some sort on your website, or how do people get hold of wherever the local Boys Brigade is?
Yeah, so if people, they can use their favourite search engine and type in Boys Brigade, or they can go to boys-brigade.org.uk. And on our homepage first, you'll see little snippets of kids waving and running around and having a lot of fun. But the first thing you'll see is a find your local group, in which people can put in their postcode or their town, and they can find their local group, and it will tell them what times they meet, where they meet, and give them the opportunity to almost inquire and say, I've got a young person, I'd love them to attend. And then we connect them with the local group. And then for any churches or for any people in a church, and they're like, I'd love this, but there isn't one nearby. Well, what they can do is, under that, it says, how can Boys Brigade how we can support your church. And we're always having conversations with churches all the time about starting new groups. So all the information is literally first and center on the homepage about how you can find your local group, find out more about your local group, but then also how you can find out more about starting a local group.
Which was the next question I was going to ask. But let's just say we've got a church where we actually think this is quite a good idea. We'd like to. What does that church need to actually have in place in order to get the support from you guys to then start their own Boys Brigade unit?
So if any church or anybody in a church is interested, wants to find out more, said you can go on the website, and then that will generate an email that comes to me. Let's be honest, it comes to me, and me and my colleague will arrange a conversation. There's no obligation at all, in which we find out a little bit more about what the church has got going on, what's in place, about what we can offer. We offer all the support and resources that a church needs. What a church really needs is some people who are willing to run, to volunteer. You don't necessarily need to have young people or loads of young people, because we can provide support in, let's get you promoting, let's get you on the local Facebook group, let's get you into the local primary schools. Because a lot of our young people I'd say, aren't coming to church already, so you don't necessarily need loads of young people. If you've got some, well, that's a great start, because they can invite their friends and the parents can do a bit of publicity for you. But really, kind of, if you've got a handful of people or if you've got one person who's really keen, then they can hopefully encourage a few more people who are, I want to find a bit more information. But we would arrange that conversation, and we would work really closely, because it's a partnership. It's not transactional. It's not like people sign on a dotted line and they never hear from us again. Actually, it's a partnership, because we want to see more churches reach their community, and so we provide all the training. As I said, we've got all the program resources. And we really help them to kind of, here's a list of what you might need in terms of some kind of basic craft equipment, games equipment, which isn't going to cost the earth. A lot of churches might have it already. Well, you're not going to need to replace it. So really what churches need is a few people who'd be willing to give up kind of an hour and a half of their time once a week. But actually they have the heart to reach their community. And they say, we've got a whole support team who can support churches, support kind of leaders, help them in their recruitment. So really it's a partnership, and we've got a lot to offer. So our program is tried and tested. It's written by leaders who run groups. It's not like it's not going to work, and it's because, as I said, it's working all over the country. 20,000 young people coming through our doors every week, and I said the majority of those are not from a church background. So if a church has at its heart, they want to reach their community, they want to see more children, young people come in through their doors, then, as I said, go on our website, email us, and we'd love to have that conversation.
Alistair, thank you. Just give us that website one more time for people who want to get hold of it and think, this is interesting, I'd like my child to go there, or even let's start a group in our church. Where do they go? Just give us that website one more time.
So it's boys-brigade.org.uk, and on there you'll be able to find our details to get in touch with us, find our group finder, so you can find your local group, and information about how churches can get involved and possibly start a group themselves.
Cool. Alistair, thank you. Appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.